Welcome to Elevating La Cultura podcast, a space where I talk with Latinas who are passionate about what they do and are willing to share their passion with others to change the narrative, especially for the next generation. Each season is centered around different topics, but all with the Latina perspective. This is season 3, focused on education. So vámonos, and let's get into it. Hey, today I'm chatting with Marialuisa, a public high school teacher here in Chicago with a big heart for her students. She knew she wanted to be a teacher since 7th grade, and her positivity and passion for walking alongside high school students is such an encouragement. She shares some great advice for how we can better understand and connect with high school aged youth so we can help guide them through life. So I hope you enjoy our conversation. Hi, I am so excited to be coming to like the end of my season with amazing Latinas who are in the educational field. And today I'm chatting with Marialuisa. We have connected again through Chicago Latina Moms. She is Isa's sister, which Isa is the founder, I've mentioned many times, the founder of Chicago Latina Moms, and she was one of my first interviews. And so I'm so excited to chat with Marialuisa today and hear her story about being in the educational field. So why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Thank you. First off, thank you so much for inviting me. I feel like I'm part of a continuous effort, to talk about Latinas in whatever field. So I'm really thankful. Thank you for the invite. My name is Marialuisa Gonzalez. I am a CPS high school teacher in a high school located in Pilsen, and I've been there for about 10 years. This is my 10th year, which is crazy. And I'm really excited to talk a little bit more about that.
I know I've mentioned on the podcast that our family recently moved to Pilsen and we are loving the area. The Pilsen area is like south of Chicago's downtown for people who aren't familiar with the city, and it is predominantly Latinx, and we have just really enjoyed being in the area. And I'm so excited to be speaking with you and get your perspective and insight on teaching the high school age students. I think we did a lot of talking about like younger students, especially students that are just entering their education journey and like middle school, but I am really thankful to be chatting with you and get the different perspective on education in a high school setting. So why don't you go ahead and walk me through your journey? Like, what made you land in like high school education?
All right. So I actually went to a Catholic grade school, but I knew I wanted to be a teacher since I was like in 7th grade. I was like that annoying friend in college that knew what they wanted to major in. Like I didn't have a plan B, I didn't have a minor, I didn't have a backup. Like I knew that I wanted to be a high school teacher. I was the student who kept all of her books. I was never really that strong in like math or science, but I loved English. I loved reading. I loved the curriculum, and I knew what I wanted to do. So I went to UIC. I have my bachelor's in secondary education. Um, 10, 11 years ago. I was really fortunate to do my observations and ended up student teaching at the high school that I'm currently still at. So I really loved that school. I connected with so many of the staff and networked with a lot of them, and they are the ones who really got me that job. So I'm really thankful for them. And I'm trying to do the same thing with our new staff as well. Trying to like pass the torch, so to speak. Yeah, so I'm really lucky with how that ended up. I do want to go back to get my master's, but I really don't know what I want to do. I think I romanticized being a teacher for such a long time. I never really had a plan B, and it's to kind of think of something else is a little bit daunting. But I really love being there, and I yeah, I don't really have any plans of like leaving anytime soon.
Yeah, you mentioned that you went to school to get your certification to be a high school teacher. And I think we've heard in past episodes about the certifications that are needed for, like, if you're going to be a bilingual educator, if you're going to be an educator in preschool or kindergarten. Like, it's different certifications that
Right.
are needed, right? Um,
Hmm.
is like high school certification, well, what would that look like? How is that different from like teaching younger grades?
So my certificate is specifically for ninth through 12th. I do have my middle school endorsement, which kind of pushes it so that I can teach sixth grade to 12th, but it is a different type of certification. But mind you, I was at UIC a long time ago, so they actually have changed a lot of their programs. So if anyone who is currently listening that's part of the program, I would definitely recommend talking to your advisor. Triple check to make sure that you're on schedule. And this is something that I tell my students too. You know, once they leave my school's doors, you know, it really is up to you to take initiative, whether it's post secondary, whether you're going to a university, college, or you want to start up your own business. You know, it really is up to you to take those steps and take initiative, and to ask for help, and you know, be comfortable asking for help. So in terms of like answering that, I've heard from, you know, younger staff members who graduated from UIC or who have graduated from other schools is that every year it looks different. The state updates so often, that the only piece of advice that I can give is just to make sure that you are talking with the right people at your school and making sure that you are reaching those requirements.
You said you romanticized about being a teacher. Like,
Mm-hmm.
what, like, explain that a little more, because you said you knew you wanted to be a teacher when you were like in middle
Seventh
school, like
grade.
seventh grade,
Yeah.
like, and that was before you even reached high school. Like,
Yeah.
how, what was like your mindset when you were like deciding, like, yes, I'm going to be a high school teacher?
Um, I liked high school better. Like my personal high school experience was something that I look back at fondly, which I know that a lot of people can't say. I went to a Catholic grade school in La Villita, but I went to a public high school in Berwyn. And it wasn't until one of my teachers, you know, she paid attention to my writing and like my work ethic, and she's actually the one who recommended me for honors. And I do think that that pretty much projected the rest of my high school career, and I enjoyed the high school experience, the high school curriculum, a little bit more than middle school, than grade school, I guess. um, but I knew that I wanted to be some type of teacher when I was in seventh grade. I had an amazing seventh grade teacher, and I really thank her. I want to find her to like thank her, you know, for kind of like paving the way for me. But I think my niche is high school for sure. In terms of romanticizing, uh, it's, you know, this is my 10th year. I think if you talk to any veteran teachers, they will probably say something very similar, just in terms of experiencing how unfair um, the education system can be, and how it's uh, I don't even know how to correctly explain it. But there's a lot of gaps that aren't really helping out the students as much as a teacher would like. It's kind of very top down. There's a lot of hierarchy. There's a lot of power in place, and you want to do everything. You want to make sure that you can connect and be there for each student, and it's just not humanly possible. And it kind of takes a lot to not unlearn that, but understand that you want to make a bigger difference, but really the difference that you can make is the time in your classroom. So that's kind of what I meant by by that.
Yeah, I think that the what I've taken away from the the educators that I've spoken to this season is that everyone had such a heart to make or like work with the system to make a better place for
Mm-hmm.
the students. And it was either driven by like a teacher that did that for them or an experience that they didn't want repeated
Right.
for anybody else. And I just like I love that, like, and it gives me hope for the next generation of kids that are coming, because I think like collectively as educators, like we see the, I don't know how to explain it either, but like
Yeah.
the uncertainty or the
Mm-hmm.
struggles or the tension within the the educational system as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
And we want to make a difference for
Yeah.
someone else, for
Mm-hmm.
each student that walks through the doors of your
Right.
classroom. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so how do you implement that with each new year, each new class? Like how,
Mm-hmm.
especially because the age group that you are um, a teacher for, like they're
Mm-hmm.
older, so they understand like all that's
Right.
happening in the world. They are trying to figure out like who they are as people.
Mm-hmm.
They're trying to find their voice. They're in this like amazing but also hard stage in their lives. um
Right.
how do you do that in your day to day while also like trying to meet all the requirements of teaching?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think when I first started, and I think this is just a like highlighting my experience at UIC, is that it was very, it was driven by like the skill set that students come in with. And I didn't really focus on their social emotional well-being when I first started, and that's something that I you know, constantly like look back at, and be like, oh, but as a first year teacher, like I don't really know what I'm doing, right? So I feel like I've been making more of a conscious effort, and so has my school, to focus on the student as far as where they are academically, how we can help them, but also just who they are as young adults. My freshman this year, I was talking about this with another coworker of mine, that their last full normal school year was sixth grade, which, if you really think about it, you're just like, what? Right? Because their seventh grade was interrupted by the last quarter of school, right? Because we all thought COVID, we'll be back in school in 2 weeks. Everyone thought that. And obviously that didn't happen. And their eighth grade was fully remote. So now that they're in person, it's a brand new school. They haven't been social or haven't had that social interaction with students for months, for years. I think it was like 17 months, right? Um, so it's been more of a push to just trying to get to know students on like on a personal, on like a human level. And I, as well as my other team members, we actually have been starting off the year with a mental health unit. And just trying to also gauge where they're at academically, but also just giving them a chance to just explore and get to know themselves on a psychological basis, on an emotional basis, and a social basis. And it's within those like little assignments, we call them formatives, and the learning experiences, like you get to know these students on a deeper level that I would have never had if I didn't start off with that unit. um, and just trying to incorporate more social emotional activities and prompts, so that you know, they can practice their academics, but also just be okay and feel free to, experience life as a young adult, as a freshman.
Wow, that's amazing to start out with that mental health
Mhm.
unit. Is that school wide, like for each grade level, or was that just in your class?
So we've been doing this for the past couple of years, but I've heard that other teachers have incorporated like social emotional stuff, that they have had like a mini mental health unit. So it's starting to, you can see the seeds kind of growing in the other departments, and that is one of our mission statements for our school too. So it's really nice to see that it's not only for the freshmen, right, that the sophomores, the juniors and seniors get to experience this as well. But I definitely remember when I first started, I didn't even personally do it for myself, you know. Um, and that's something that I tell my students when when we first start the unit, right? That they're part of the generation that's talking about this. So it's becoming less and less of a stigma. It's becoming less and less of a taboo, right? I didn't grow up with it. My parents didn't grow up with it. My sister, you probably didn't grow up with it, right? They are the generation that can, change that narrative.
Yeah, I was just thinking, like, I didn't start thinking about mental health seriously until after I had my kids. And then I had to start thinking about it seriously because it was like, well, it was because my doctor, like, made me
Mm.
talk about it. And,
Right.
but I think it's so encouraging that it's being normalized, like, in
Mhm.
everyday life, especially in education. Because like I remember having health class and like gym class, but
Yeah.
mental health was never part of it. Like it was
Mhm.
always just like, what are you eating? What are you exercising? But your
Right.
mental health is like the foundation of your whole well-being. And oh, I love that that is becoming a priority, especially in the youth. Um,
Yeah, and they share so much, like they're very open, they're really self-aware, and it kind of like throws me off sometimes. It's like, wow, a freshman, a ninth grader wrote this, right? And I think oftentimes like teachers, like adults, even parents, sometimes, we just, it's not that we don't listen, but we need to acknowledge that our kiddos do have a lot of experiences, right? That they might not talk about it, but they know, right? Like they know if they've been hurt, or if they've hurt someone, or they can see injustices, or if someone doesn't make them feel right or uncomfortable, or if they feel like they belong or don't belong, or trying to find out who they are, or trying to find out their sexuality, right? These topics might be taboo in like families and communities, but our teens like definitely have the knowledge, and giving them those opportunities to flush out those ideas are really pivotal, especially in their formative years, especially during their freshman year.
how do you bridge their like freshman to sophomore, sophomore to junior, junior to senior. Like I know like once you're a senior, like then you're like, "Oh my goodness, this is like the
Mm-hmm.
end," and I'm like out in the
Yeah.
real world as far as like either continuing education or choosing a different like trade or starting
Mhm.
work. um, how do you start building that foundation or like helping them realize like how to
Navigate
grow,
the world.
yeah, grow, navigate into
Mhm.
adulthood.
I mean, as far as academics, we try our best to vertically align within our departments, right? Like the skill set that they need for freshman year will be built upon their sophomore year, right? So they're building towards what they eventually will accomplish or will get to do their senior year. So that's where the academics comes in. We are super lucky to have like 6 counselors. We have 3 in-house social workers. We have nurses. We are very lucky to have those resources for our students, for their social emotional well-being. But I know that a lot of it does happen in school, in class, in the learning experiences. And I see some of my previous students, and they're seniors now, and it just blows my mind that they're seniors, but they still come and say hi to me, right? Like those connections are there, and we're writing letters of recommendation to our kiddos. So um, by having those connections, I think that also informally helps students kind of navigate high school, um, and just acknowledging that, if they don't want to go to college, or maybe if they don't want to go to university, they have their hearts set on a trade school, like, okay, well, how can we help you, right? Just not negating that there's only one clear path out of school, right? That there's multiple paths, but you know as as long as you're leaving here with the skill set, right, and the values, I think that's how we bridge those gaps.
That's great. I think back to when I was going to school. Like there was no option. Like I was graduating and then I was going to college and I was getting a degree and that was it.
Yeah.
I I mean, I did get to choose which path that I chose to study. Um,
Mhm.
but I remember in my high school years, like there was like I just kind of followed along whatever someone else said. Okay, this is the next step. All right, fine, I'll do that. Uh,
Mhm.
so I have, now that I have my own kids, like I have been rethinking like how to encourage further education and
Mhm.
while creating a safe space for my kids to be able to communicate and try things out, um, but also giving them that uh, choice to
Mhm.
decide to continue once they're old enough to continue their
Right.
education at a college, a university, a trade school, a science, math,
Mhm.
technology, like whichever path that they want, but also creating that space that they have the option and the
Mhm.
resources and the support for whatever they choose. And I owe that to the educators that I have in my life who are
Mhm.
showing me that like this is a different option, that it doesn't have to be the
Right.
same as it was
Yeah.
for us. So that's
Right.
that's great. I really am a supporter of like advocating for youth and like
Mhm.
supporting them through their emotions, their questions, their
Yeah.
challenges. How
Mhm.
would you say, like, as a parent, we can support the teachers that are with our kids like all day, every day? How can
Mhm.
we support them at home as well? or work alongside the teachers to help our
Right.
kids?
I actually, what you just mentioned before kind of also responds to this prompt as well, right? That like there are numerous opportunities for teachers to acknowledge the student as an individual, but it shouldn't just end there, right? It shouldn't just end at 240, right? That should live at home too, right? Just acknowledging, that our kiddos are individual beings. They will have ideas that will not necessarily align to how they were raised. And that is not a personal, um, that's not an attack on parents. If anything, that's more of like an indicator that you're letting them explore their own ideas, and just acknowledging that, and helping them process through their feelings, process them through their thoughts, and just being open. I think a lot of the times students are kind of close themselves off because they might not have that opportunity at home. It might not be a safe space. And that's the reality for a lot of students in general, like not just in CPS. I think that's just in general for youth. So I think what parents and guardians can do is be, provide that, that basic need of safety, whether that's physical or emotional, and acknowledge that they're growing, and kind of letting them figure things out for themselves, with obviously, with some type of guidance, right? But giving them the opportunity in a safe space, as opposed to doing it as an adult, which could possibly be or cause some type of harm.
Hmm. How can we, as a community, like not just parents, but also community, help youth during a hard time? Because the past, I think you said 17 months, have been a whirlwind for everybody, a shock, and especially uh, like in the year 2020, like there were a lot of issues that came to the surface that were like really personal, really close to home, um, and really hard to navigate, not just as adults, but I can imagine like as kids too. Even my younger kids who are in middle school, like we were having hard conversations in the home. So how can we as a community, parents, guardians, teachers, um, help our youth during hard times?
This reminds me of meetings that I sit in for a lot of my students, right? That it does really take like a mini community, right? It does take a village, and I think it is always going back to the whole point of showing our youth, showing our kiddos, showing our children that we care, that it's not just one person, that it is a family member, it is the school, it is the teacher, it's the counselor, right? Um, I think just showing up collectively, and not just like little bits and pieces, but like all at once, and acknowledge where they're at, and letting them know that it's okay, that we as adults struggle with many things in our lifetimes, but normalizing that it's okay to ask for help, and that there are people out there to help them, that is going to stay with them a lot more than we realize.
I'm curious about extracurricular activities. I think we, um, like I've heard a lot, like, oh well, kids just need extracurricular activities. They just need like something to do. Um, and yes, that's a big piece, like getting them involved in like the arts, music, um, things that they find interest in, hobbies. Like that's great. Um, but also, I think that there's sometimes a piece that's missing, um, and that's like the relational piece. Because as parents, we can think like, oh, well, I'm driving my kid to soccer and baseball and basketball, and then on this season they're doing this, and it could be really stressful for parents and kids and families and everybody. um, so how can we find a balance to support our kids in the hobbies that they like, help them find interest, whether it's after school activities, or with like summer activities, but also while maintaining that relationship?
Definitely, I would suggest, checking in, if not daily, right? That it's so easy for hobbies and clubs to feel like a check mark, right? Of like things of what we have to do for today, right? It becomes part of our agendas, right? It becomes part of like our calendars. Um, and that's great, right? Kids need routine, right? But if there's a day where they're just not feeling it, or they had a really tough practice, right? Checking in with them and acknowledge what happened, or if they want to talk about it, so that they can feel safe with you again, like that relational part, like you mentioned, and allowing them to make decisions if they want to continue, or if they don't. Checking in with them is not just a simple like, oh, how was it today, right? Checking in can be follow-ups, and those follow-up questions or those follow-up comments let them know that you are paying attention, that you are caring, um, in another way, right? Apart from letting them experience new things, right? But checking in with them on an emotional level, um, I think would be a great way to kind of build that rapport, right? Build that relational part that you say sometimes, can feel like it's not there.
Yeah, just thinking about that is is hard, like for me personally. um I like that you said like checking in with them daily. Sometimes we think, okay, we'll check with them at the end of the week, or like then the end of the week
Mhm.
turns into end of the month. Um,
Right.
but even like as parents, I think it starts with us, like being able
Yeah.
to have those conversations on an
Mm-hmm.
emotional level, because it's not just the kid sharing their
You too.
emotions, their feelings. It's like me too. And
Mm-hmm.
man, I think that just really touched me. And I think it is important for us to realize that it's we're not going to make that emotional connection with our kids if we're not also willing to be vulnerable. I think for adults, it's vulnerability is not, well, it's like a scary thing. Um, but I think it's necessary if we want the next generation to be better and have a better mental health foundation, then we also need to be doing the work. And I'm talking to myself too. Like right now, I'm talking to myself. I need to be doing the
No,
work.
yeah, I'm the same way. I mean, like, I don't have children of my own, but like, I call my kiddos like my kids all the time. And like, how can I expect my kids to know how they truly feel if like I myself haven't modeled it, right? One of the examples that I love to give my students when I talk about the emotional aspect of mental health, is something that I experienced with my sister, right? Where like if I was mad or if she was mad, it was mostly me. Like I just shut down. I like gave everyone the silent treatment. I just didn't talk. Um, and if I was mad at someone, my apology was like, "Hey, I'm gonna go to the store. Do you want something?" And every time I say that, my kids are like, yeah, that's me. And I'm like, yeah, that is a response that we often see, right? Students and kids are sponges. They replicate what they see. So, I use that example, and I talk about that and how, I oftentimes saw that at home. I oftentimes saw that in my own classmates and in um, my teams after school, right? Like we do replicate what we see. Um, and that's not really an apology, right? But that's the process that some of us have. And like when we're angry, we often take it out on others because it's so much easier to do that as opposed to uh, look at ourselves and be like, well, why are we angry? Like this person who's my friend, I'm taking it out on her without knowing that I'm damaging my friendship with her, right? And then it snowballs so quickly into like, well, I'm having a fight with her, and next week I'm not friends with her anymore, right? Um, that management of emotions, it's not just that moment. It's what it can do socially to a person, right? I have to think about that for myself all the time as an adult, right? So we have to give grace when we talk about that with our kiddos and model that process, right? Like if I get frustrated with my kids, like I will be frustrated, but I'll also verbally say, I need a break right now. I'm frustrated because XYZ. I'm going to take a break and then XYZ, right? I think modeling that is something that that parents and guardians and community members can do as well emotionally. So I totally hear you.
Yeah. As as a high school teacher, is it like, do you go from class to class to class like all day? Like it's back to back? Like first, like how long are your classes? Like how long are you with each set of kids? And then like how do you reset after each class? Because I'm sure that it's like so different within like the first hour, second hour to the end of class.
Oh, oh yes, yeah. So my current schedule, I teach 2 classes back to back. We actually navigate under a block schedule, which is very similar to like college, right? So I don't see all of my classes each day. I see half of them for a longer period of time. And this is a schedule that the staff like votes for. So each class period is 100 minutes. So I teach 200 minutes straight. And then I have like a 5-minute break. And then I have department meetings, which are 50 minutes. Then I have a 50-minute lunch break. And then I teach my last class of the day, which is 100 minutes. And then I'm talking about specifically Monday, like each day looks different. Mondays after school, I stay for guitar and vocal club for an hour. So on Mondays, I leave like around 4. And the rest of the week has like a different schedule. So yeah, I think by now, because it's like at the end of the quarter, right? Like I have a rhythm now, right? But it took so long to get there. And what helps me reset is, just having like a little moment to myself, even if it's for like 3 minutes, just to like take a breather or listen to a song or honestly checking my phone because I can't do that. I don't do that throughout the class period, right? And when I have classes with my co-teacher, just venting if necessary about that class period or like whatever happened, just letting those emotions out. So that definitely helps me reset. And like throughout the lunch break or my co-teach, I'm sorry, not co-teach, but my coworkers who are like around my classroom, just checking in with them, talking to an adult is also a really nice way to reset because I'm with kiddos for like 200 minutes at a time, You know, like you can't joke with them, obviously. Like you can joke with your coworkers, so that also helps. Coffee also helps a lot
Oh
as
my
well.
gosh, coffee. Yes.
Every
Uh,
teacher is, well, for the most part, fueled. I'm fueled by jumping beans, so
yeah.
you know, throw that pitch in there. Go to jumping bean, support
Yes.
them.
Yes. A great cafe in Pilsen.
In Pilsen, yeah.
Um, so you said that this type of schedule was voted by uh, the people in the school. Like, who is that different every year? Who makes that decision?
Yeah, it's different every year. It's there's like a principal. Um, I I'm honestly blanking out on the terms, but there's a schedule that's proposed by the principal, and then there's a schedule proposed by CTU, and the staff like essentially votes on it. So it's pretty democratic, you know, whichever bell or whichever schedule gets the most votes, then that's the one that we go with. But we've been working with the block schedule for the past couple of years. It looks a little bit different each year. Like last year, we had 90 minutes. This year, we have 100, but it's relatively, it's the same rationale, right? Where we were with our students longer, and the schedule switches the next day. You know, to kind of replicate college classes.
I guess I didn't realize that it could be changed or voted on. So that's
Mm-hmm.
interesting. Is that throughout all of Chicago, or is it just per school?
I think it's per school.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. I know you talked a little bit about like making sure that you have that time to reset throughout the day and being able to chat with teachers that you see in the hall. But is there anything that you do specifically to like pour into yourself, like on the weekends or like every evening, like that you have made a routine because you know that this is like necessary for you?
So you're talking about self-care, yeah?
Yes. Yeah.
What do I do? Yeah, I pour into like my social and like personal self-care bucket. My love language is like quality time and like acts of service. So I spend it with, you know, like with my husband, with my family, with some close friends. But yeah, but sometimes I do like just need to be by myself, and that usually just consists of, you know, reading a book or finding a new song to karaoke to. You know, that's also one of my things that I love to do with some friends. But I think the biggest one in terms of like work is just like saying no, like setting that boundary of like, all right, it's Friday, it's 2:40, I am like out of here. Right. I wasn't like that before. I stayed after work for numerous years on Friday, you know, and I just setting that boundary of, you know what, I'm done with my contract hours, you know, it's okay to step away and like enjoy the weekend. I think that's been the most positive one that has just allowed me to feel more comfortable saying no to other things that come up. I personally, like, I do my nails, and like, you know, like we do our lashes. I do my lashes. Like that's probably like the biggest one. I don't like color my hair. I have like jet black hair, so hair maintenance, I'm just like, no. But I will splurge on lashes and fall asleep on the bed, you know, and that's really nice.
Yes, that hour, it goes by too quickly.
Hmm.
It goes by too
Yeah, so
quickly.
that's really nice too.
Yeah, I have really enjoyed like asking people like what they do for their self-care and like normalizing the fact that every single person needs to have like a set thing that they have to reset, even if it's just like in the morning they are enjoying a cup of coffee by themselves before anyone wakes up, or whether it's journaling or working out or um, getting lashes done or saying no, like shutting off at a certain time. um, I want to go back, and you said that you lead the some music class on Mondays. uh, I'd love to know like what other options there are for kids in high school, like what other extracurricular options they have, and like do you lead any other classes throughout the week?
Um, I'm well, as far as my school, we have again, we're super lucky. All of well, not every single teacher, but a lot of our teachers like host something after school. So there's tons of sports, there's tons of clubs for our kiddos to join. Um, but if no one really wants to do anything like that, we do have I think we still have our collaboration with um, after school matters, right? We do have a service learning initiative that's called Build On. So if students want to like volunteer for a couple of activities, they can do that as well. But throughout the week, um, I mean, it's hard to host something that's not part of that's outside of the schedule. But we have like a robust like music program too. So whenever we get to do assemblies, that's always really fun to see students stay after school and practice for that. Uh, we have a great theater program, so it's also nice to like walk out and hear students, rehearse their lines. So it's fun to see those kids practicing like on the other side of the school. But yeah, if anyone is listening who might not have thought about it, definitely check your school's directory, check your school's website. I'm sure there's a little section on clubs and sports and activities, and reach out to that staff member.
Yeah, do you know if it's possible or if it's hard for, like, if someone outside of the school that's not an educator per se, like with the school, if they can apply to like lead a club or come in and facilitate a workshop? Do you know if that's possible, or is it done? Like, do people do that?
No, it's definitely still possible. I think when I first started, we had like a little creative writing program, and the other teacher who hosted that with me, one of her friends was a creative writer, so like um, we asked her if she could like join in for a couple of sessions, right, to help our students. So I know it's possible. I do know that with COVID, it's a little bit harder. I know that with like CPS volunteer forms, that's also just like an additional step. But if anyone is interested in doing that, I definitely recommend, connecting with a teacher who's currently there, to kind of like host you, and just make sure to fill out the required paperwork. But it's not like the school year, like we're just starting our second quarter, right? Um, I, I don't think it's like too late if anyone was considering trying to reach out to youth in a different way.
Okay, good to know. Good to know. Um, I wonder if you, like, as a Latina, like, have you had to like work through any like patterns, ideas, or limiting beliefs to get to where you're at now as an educator?
Um, I think the biggest one, so yes, I think the biggest one, I think might have like a personal connection, like you know, not being like Latina enough, right? I have lost count of how many times when I speak Spanish, I get the reaction of like, oh, you speak Spanish? You don't look Latina. And I'm just like, I don't know what to say to that, it's just a weird comment that people make sometimes, or, not feeling good enough, like you're neither good enough here or feeling like you're not good enough there, right? So just trying to like unpack that and like process through that, and even that criticism, kind of comes within the community too sometimes, it's kind of mean girls-esque, if you will. But just, learning, that that shows up differently, right? Like I wish I was a little bit more fluent, but I'm not. I do have a speech impediment that comes like really through when I speak Spanish for some reason. But that's also been something that I've like learned to, like love and accept for myself, because like I have students who come up to me and they're like, oh, you stutter too, like I stutter, so it's nice to see that they can see themselves, like through me. So that's really nice. I think that definitely helps. um and it's, I have my own struggles, like professionally too, but I think at the end of the day, the driving force is, just showing up for your kids, right? That your kids will notice if someone is trying.
Well, thank you for sharing. I like to um, ask people because I think, like, I want to normalize that too, that we are all like, have had to like push through and struggle through our own like mental blocks. And if any youth are listening, that like they're not alone. Like us adults, even though we might look like we have it together, we have like pushed through our own like stuff to get to where we're at. And even now we still don't have it together. Like we're still trying to figure it out one step at a time. So I appreciate you sharing that. I like to end each episode with encouragement for the next generation. So if you could send your students out with encouraging feedback, what would that be?
uh Definitely take care of yourself. And more often than not, like, even us, like we struggle with that, right? Like what does that even mean? Like how do I take care of myself? Like what does that even, like what does that look like? What does that sound like? How does it feel like? And that really just, that will start that journey for that person, right? For that student. So definitely take care of yourself. Figure that out, what that means to you. Find your people. Find your people that you can feel safe and kind of explore with. Because I think that if a person doesn't have that safety net, whatever it looks like, whatever it sounds like, um, that will translate into how someone feels about themselves or how they treat others. And I think another thing that I always go back to is the quote from Maya Angelou, right? People will forget what you say to them, but they will never forget how you made them feel. So just being conscientious about, like take care of yourself first and foremost, but take care of others, that you can be the reason why someone becomes a teacher. You can be the reason why, someone has a really good day or a really bad day.
That's such good advice. I'm always like encouraged by everyone's advice that they give, and I love when I do these interviews on Sunday because it sends me off into my week like, yes, we got this. Anyway, I'm so appreciative of your time and your story and all that you shared. I am so grateful that I was able to speak with you and have you on this season of the podcast. I know that our listeners, I know that our listeners are gonna appreciate having a perspective of a high school teacher, especially one that can encourage us to love on our kids and really support our youth and the next generation. So thank you.
No, thank you.
Yeah, and I'm sure we'll chat soon. But I hope you have a good rest of your week, and thanks.
Thank you. You too.
All right, bye.
Bye.
It's so great to see people really loving and pouring into young adults. High school can be such a tricky time as kids are navigating between their youth and adulthood, but I have such hope for this next generation, and I know they're going to be amazing at continuing the positive shift in mental and emotional well-being. Okay, amigos, thank you so much for listening. There'll be a new episode every Tuesday, so after you listen, feel free to take a screenshot to post on Instagram and tag @Elevating La Cultura. You can also comment on this YouTube video if you're watching online. I always like to hear from people and how they resonate with the stories that I share. So leave a review on Apple Podcasts so we can get more ears listening to these stories and we can continue elevating La Cultura. All right. Enjoy the rest of your day, afternoon, evening, whenever you're listening, y nos vemos next week. Bye.